Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Is it Tuesday? Who the fuck knows? I've lost all kind of knowing of days now. But a very warm welcome to the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, we discuss the fact that James Gunn has said that Greg Berlanti's Green Lantern show isn't cancelled. And we asked the question, is it right for James Gunn to keep Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn while he replaces Henry Cavill as Superman? I think we all know what I think about that question and what my answer will be. Stay here to find out what I have to say. First of all, James Gunn has responded to rumours that Greg Berlanti's HBO Max Green Lantern streaming show has been cancelled. He says that is not true. So James Gunn is quite happy for someone like Greg Berlanti to be running an HBO Max Green Lantern streaming show. Don't forget, and if you didn't know this, Greg Berlanti's name was attached to the Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, that one. The one that sucked eggs. The one that flopped at the global box office. Doesn't this prove that James Gunn isn't really in charge of everything? Who is making these decisions? Because this is the dumbest decision in the world. Now, originally, this show was going to be something else, and they decided to rebrand and go back to the drawing board and do something else with this show. So now it's going to be a Jon Stewart show, whatever that's going to be. Now, I do know that James Gunn is planning a Green Lantern movie. There's no question about that, but it looks like this Green Lantern show, this Jon Stewart Green Lantern show, will be the first thing they do on Green Lantern in DC Universe. Don't forget, this show originally has been in development for at least 2 or 3 years. So this wasn't originally part of James Gunn's plan. This existed already. And this is the problem. This partial reboot is getting messier and messier by the day. How can you do this? How can you keep up? Why are you taking stuff that already existed before you came? Why not just fully reboot stuff? Because he's not allowed. Because the Warner Brothers Discovery CEO is not allowing him to. So now Greg Berlanti, the man, as I say, whose name was attached to the flop Green Lantern movie, gets to mould his own Green Lantern series about Jon Stewart. So, you know, this is the man who decided that Tom Welling's Clark Kent should retire from being Superman. I just thought I'd remind you about that. So as I say, this partial reboot is very, very messy. This doesn't give me any more confidence than I had yesterday or the day before or the day before that on what James Gunn and Peter Safran are planning. A partial reboot is very, very messy. You either start again or you carry on and you improve what was there before. A partial reboot, how do you even do a partial reboot? How are they going to do this? I suspect that Walter Hamada's multiverse strategy is still going forward. Walter Hamada is the man who used to run DC Films and the man that James Gunn used to call Walt. Yeah. So basically, as I've been saying for weeks, nothing has fucking changed. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that Greg Berlanti gets to mould a Jon Stewart Green Lantern show. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, everyone, in the comments below. I think this is ridiculous that we're going for a Green Lantern streaming series first before we even see a movie. The potential of a great Green Lantern movie is huge cinematically. And again, I've been saying this for a few days as well, that James Gunn isn't making all these decisions. And who knows if it was his decision to replace Henry Cavill or not. We'll never know. Now, he claims it is his decision. Look, the truth will out. The truth always comes out in the end. But pardon my arrogance here, but when you're saying to me that you're keeping a project that had nothing to do with you before you were involved in Greg Berlanti's Jon Stewart Green Lantern show, I see this problematic behaviour. As a DC fan, I want this Green Lantern show to be cancelled. I've always wanted this Green Lantern show to be cancelled. I don't like Greg Berlanti. I don't trust him. He's an extreme left progressive. He only wants to forward his progressive politics on the screen, and I have no interest in that. He's the one who's been obsessed with domesticating Superman. He domesticated basically Tyler Hoechling's Superman in the Arrowverse. I'm not talking about Superman and Lois. I'm talking about prior to Superman and Lois. Do you remember when him and Lois have to go to Argo City because Lois is pregnant? So this is the man who did that. So I have no trust in Greg Berlanti giving us an awesome John Stewart. You know who I would trust to do an awesome John Stewart? Zack Snyder. And he was going to give us one, wasn't he? But he wasn't allowed to have a John Stewart cameo in the Snyder Cut because apparently they had plans for a movie. Whatever happened to those plans for a movie? But this is how vindictive the old leadership was. They had no plans for a movie. They wanted to do the Green Lantern TV show, and this was their motivations for not allowing Zack to cameo John Stewart. That's all he was going to do, cameo him. And maybe we would have seen a lot more of him in a Justice League 2 and a Justice League 3. Zack could have even done his own John Stewart Green Lantern movie. Who would you trust to adapt Green Lantern, Zack Snyder or Greg Berlanti? The history of both creatives are there on the screen to see. But James Gunn is allowing this to happen because really he doesn't have any choice in it. I'm quite sure that James isn't even happy about this situation. So already you can see a big mess where James Gunn isn't really the organ grinder here, but he's merely just the monkey. And he's basically being chucked decisions by David Zaslav, and he's having to deal with these awful decisions on a daily basis because David Zaslav shouldn't be in charge of DC decision-making or filmmaking decision-making. Why? Because he has no experience in scripted entertainment. I've told you about this so many times. He did a great job with Discovery and Discovery Plus. Now, you know, we're talking about reality television. We're talking about documentaries, nature, you know, things about space travel, documentaries about space travel and NASA and shit like that. Discovery Plus is awesome, but it's unscripted. He has no experience in scripted, so you're seeing really bad decision after bad decision. So there's that. So we are getting the Greg Berlanti Green Lantern show, apparently. But of course, we are in an ever-changing franchise, and that could change. He could be just saying that. We just don't know. Now let's jump to the second part of Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. So it basically is a partial reboot. James Gunn's and Peter Safran's big plan is to keep some things and get rid of others, aka get rid of Snyder's cast, but keep their own stuff there. Now, of course, James Gunn didn't cast Margot Robbie. Margot Robbie's Babylon movie, well, she didn't direct it, but she's in it. She's starring alongside Brad Pitt and some very huge names, has flopped. So Margot Robbie hasn't actually got a good past kind of record in the box office recently. Babylon flopped, the Suicide Squad flopped, Birds of Prey flopped, and I believe the Barbie movie will flop as well. Why does she get to keep her job as Harley Quinn? Because let's be absolutely clear here, she is going nowhere. Now, with how flippant and reactive Zaslav is, if Lady Gaga's interpretation of Harley is really successful and Joker 2, Folie à Deux, makes a lot of money, I think that Margot may be history. But let's look at this logically. Let's be honest. It was David Zaslav who decided that Henry Cavill must be replaced as Superman only after 2 months of bringing him back and telling him, go Henry, tell your fans you're back. This is how creatively bankrupt and dumb this guy Zaslav is. But anyway, basically, Zaslav fired Henry because he blamed him for the box office of Black Adam. Henry was, what, in like 10 seconds of that movie, and he got blamed. And I told you prior to his sacking, this is what was going to happen, and that they blamed Henry. that he didn't bring more people, that Superman didn't bring more people to Black Adam. 10 seconds, right? Well, let's look at Margot Robbie. Birds of Prey. She was the star of that film. It flopped, right? James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. She was basically the star of that movie. It flopped. And Babylon, she's pretty much the star of that movie, and it flopped. Why isn't she getting punished for this? Like Henry Cavill is being punished after 10 seconds of screen time. It hardly seems fair, does it, everyone? Because it's not. It's utter bullshit. But James Gunn wants to keep her because she can't uplift the movie. She's no use to them. There was this kind of weird flippancy to the reaction of the first Suicide Squad, where it did really well in the box office, but the critics and a lot of people hated it. But everyone said it did well because of Margot Robbie's Harley. Now, I've always said anything with the Joker in it will always make money. When you look at the Joker's appearances in DC media, he always uplifts the box office. Batman '89, The Dark Knight, the Joker movie. And I think even if you don't like Leto's Joker, the character being involved uplifted that movie. If I'm being honest, it was Joker and Harley being together as a couple that people had never seen in live action and were really desperate to see. Whatever you think about what they did with that, people were excited, and that's why the box office for the first Suicide Squad was so good. The first Suicide Squad movie, warts and all, was financially more successfully viable than James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Now, I think James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is okay. It's entertaining. It's not a bad movie, in any stretch of the imagination. But I'll ask the question again, and I want your comments down below, your honest opinions. Do you think it's fair that Margot Robbie, after 3 or 4 flops, gets to keep her role as Harley Quinn when Henry Cavill's being punished after 10 seconds of screen time? Is that fair that he gets to lose his job? Why isn't Margot being replaced by a younger model? And if you say, well, Harley's popular, Mick, so is Henry Cavill as Superman. That's the point I'm making here. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. This semi-reboot from Gunn and Safran is an absolute mess, and other people behind the scenes are pulling their strings. This is why nobody wanted this gig, everyone. This is why Todd Phillips, although it was wrong to go to Todd Phillips to run DC Studios, said, fuck you, am I getting involved with this shit when you're not even going to give me freedom to do what I want? The old leadership wouldn't even, sanction his DC Black Label concept, which was brilliant because he was going to adapt Black Label from the comics and give all these villains and different DC characters their own movies. A great idea. And even though I believe that Todd doesn't know much about DC and he's not really a DC fan, in fact, he said he only did Joker because comic book characters are popular and it enabled him to do the story he wanted to do and make it successful at the same time. So Todd Phillips has been very, very honest that he's not a comic book fan. He's not really a fan of all these comic book movies and media, but he used the popularity of comic book characters to make a movie. That's really not the right person to put in charge of DC Studios, but because he made $1 billion movie, that's the only reason, right, Zaslav wanted him to run DC. Now, on that premise, do you trust the decision-making of David Zaslav? Well, I do not. David Zaslav has led us to this, giving Henry Cavill his job back as Superman, then taking it away and blaming him for 10 seconds of screen time, but allowing Margot Robbie to keep her gig as Harley Quinn is hugely problematic to me. And, next month we're going to know a lot more about this plan. So, if there actually is a plan, we're going to find out what it is. So that's going to be very interesting. And of course, here on Movies TV Mad, I will be reacting to that. But if you sack Henry Cavill, you've got to sack Margot Robbie. It's not fair. Imagine this. Even though they're denying it, imagine if they sack Gal Gadot but keep Margot Robbie. How problematic is that? Think about it for a second. Think about it. Think about the hypocrisy. And as I said earlier, how does this actually work? How do you change some things in the universe and keep others? The multiverse strategy. It's obvious. It's obvious they're sticking with Hamada's multiverse strategy. This is what's going to happen. They're going to keep some things and get rid of other things, and it's all going to be rather messy. So they're doing this again. They're doing what they were going to do in the Flash movie. Basically, the Justice League idea is still there, even though they failed at doing it. This will probably be a cleaner kind of Justice League situation, but this is what we're doing. Who knows if this is going to work or not going to work? I strongly believe that they're not going to cast a white Superman. I think they're going to cast a Latino or an African-American Superman. Basically, they're not going to do themselves any favors here, because at the end of the day, people are furious about Henry Cavill being removed and other people keeping their jobs as well. And, you know, when you look at Project Justice League, which is a fan kind of event about showing us what could have happened in Justice League 2 and 3, and you see the trends for that, you see how huge the Snyderverse still is. So every bad decision that Gunn and Safran make is going to be visited back on them by the public. So every decision that Gunn and Safran make is going to have to be airtight, but because of these people's, you know, they're not, you know, because they're so creatively bankrupt and they're so obsessed with their progressiveness and their political stances, they're not going to be able to help themselves, and they're going to get themselves in a lot of trouble. Just because somebody's famous, it doesn't mean you get to trust them. So there are many problematic issues here, and sweeping them under the carpet if you're a shill and you're shilling James Gunn isn't going to take the problems away. 2022 was a horrible year to be a DC fan. I thought the Batman was okay. I enjoyed Peacemaker, but I want a lot more than Peacemaker and the Batman. There's elements of the Batman I really don't like, and you know, this is what we've got right now. But Gunn's going to give us another Batman. How is that going to work? Problems after problems after problems. Probably on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, we're going to do a special video going back on DC in 2022. What we got in terms of content, the changes at Warner Brothers Discovery, James Gunn and Peter Safran coming in, and just looking at what a 2022 we had. It was another bad year to be a DC fan. This has been Tuesday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.